You log into your 401k portal and see a comforting $1.5 million balance. Then you look at your mail stack and see a $145,000 wall of toxic debt. That debt is spread across a home equity line of credit, 3 credit cards, and lingering student loans. You assume you can just use your peak earning years to max out your catch-up contributions to cross the finish line. You expect the extra space the IRS grants older savers will shield your income. But the IRS just upended the rules for high earners. They are converting your standard pre-tax safe haven into a mandatory post-tax Roth bucket. If you make over a certain threshold, your upfront tax break on those extra savings is entirely gone. You are now forced to pay taxes on that money today before it ever goes into your account. This single regulatory shift changes your entire math. It changes your order of operations. My name is Frank. If nobody in your life is having this conversation with you about the decade that decides everything, that's exactly what this channel is for. Subscribe. Today, we are going to look at the exact numbers that prove why blindly chasing these new 2026 catch-up rules can actually dismantle your retirement security if you are carrying debt. Let's look at David. David is 53 years old. He works as a senior project manager. David earns $150,000 a year. Over his career, David has done what the brochures told him to do. He accumulated a $1.5 million balance inside his traditional, pre-tax 401k retirement plan. To the casual observer, David is winning. He looks financially secure. But David has a hidden structural drag on his household balance sheet. He carries $145,000 in non-mortgage debt. It is split into 3 structural leaks. First, a massive $75,000 home equity line at a stinging 10% variable interest rate. Second, $30,000 in credit card debt bleeding him at a brutal 21% interest rate. Finally, he has $40,000 in Parent Plus student loans at a fixed 8% interest rate. David's plan was simple. He wanted to use his 50s to max out his standard retirement contributions. He also wanted to max out his catch-up contributions, which are just the extra dollar limits the IRS specifically builds into retirement accounts once you turn 50. For the year 2026, the standard catch-up limit for savers aged 50 to 59 is $7,500. For savers aged 60 to 63, the Secure Act 2.0 has raised that catch-up limit to an enhanced $11,250. David is 53, so his catch-up target is $7,500 on top of his base contribution. He thought this extra $7,500 would lower his current tax bill. He thought it would lower his adjusted gross income while building his nest egg. Here is the trap. The IRS decided that because David makes $150,000, he is too high of an earner to get a break. Under the new Secure Act 2.0 rules, they block him from his pre-tax deduction. The law requires that these extra dollars go into a Roth account. A Roth account is a retirement bucket where you contribute post-tax dollars, meaning you pay the tax upfront today and get no tax deduction this year. Because David is over that $145,000 income threshold, he is legally barred from taking a tax deduction on his $7,500 catch-up contribution. His employer must route those dollars into a post-tax Roth destination. You think the problem is that you need to save more money as you approach retirement. The actual problem is that you are saving money in the wrong bucket while ignoring the compounding damage of high-interest debt. Let's look at the core mathematical friction inside David's life. David has a finite amount of cash flow each month. He has to choose where his next dollar goes. He can either force that next dollar into his newly mandated post-tax 401k catch-up bucket, or he can use it to pay down his $145,000 debt. If David chooses path A, he maxes out his retirement plan. He puts his base contribution in, and he adds the $7,500 post-tax catch-up contribution. Let's look at what that money actually earns. Historically, a balanced retirement portfolio might return an estimated 7% in the market over time. That 7% growth is an assumption. It is completely unguaranteed. Meanwhile, look at what David's debt is costing him. His $30,000 credit card balance is compounding against him at a guaranteed 21% interest rate. His $75,000 home equity line of credit is costing him a guaranteed 10% interest rate. His student loans are draining him at a guaranteed 8% interest rate. This creates a severe negative spread. You cannot mathematically outinvest a 21% guaranteed drain by chasing an unguaranteed 7% return. You cannot even outinvest a 10% variable home equity line. Every dollar David puts into his post-tax catch-up while holding this debt balance is a dollar that loses purchasing power. It is a mathematical friction that slows his real progress down to a crawl. And look at the tax reality. David already has $1.5 million inside his traditional pre-tax account. You think a $1.5 million nest egg means you are financially secure. The actual problem is that if that money is locked entirely in a traditional account, you are harboring a massive hidden tax bill. Every single dollar David withdraws from that $1.5 million traditional account in retirement will be taxed as ordinary income. If David retires with that traditional balance and still holds his $145,000 debt, he will have to pull out even larger distributions just to pay his monthly debt service. Those larger distributions will push him into higher retirement tax brackets. He will be forced to pay higher taxes in retirement just to feed old debt. When you layer a $145,000 toxic debt drag on top of the new post-tax catch-up mandates, your real retirement runway isn't 10 years. It is zero. It is zero unless you change where your next dollar is allocated this week. If nobody in your life is having this conversation with you about the structural friction of debt versus the new 2026 tax rules, that is exactly why we are analyzing these numbers today. Subscribe so you do not miss the mechanical breakdown of how to fix this layout. This brings us to the 2026 Bridge Allocation Action Plan. David is 53. Which means he has a short 12-year runway before he hits his target retirement age of 65. He cannot afford to waste a single month of his peak earning years running on a financial treadmill. The first step of the Bridge Allocation Action Plan is to capture the employer match. An employer match is the complementary money a company adds to your retirement account when you contribute a specific percentage. This match is an immediate, guaranteed return. It represents a 100% return on your initial dollar. No debt interest rate can outpace a 100% immediate match. David must continue to contribute just enough to his standard 401k to vest every single dollar of his employer match. That is non-negotiable. Here is the thing about the second step. This is where the recovery path diverges from standard advice. Once David has secured his employer match, he must completely pause his optional post-tax catch-up contribution. He must stop sending the extra $7,500 into the Roth 401k bucket, because that catch-up money no longer gives him an upfront tax break, and because it cannot outpace his 21% debt, that money belongs somewhere else. By freezing the catch-up contribution, David uncovers $7,500 in annual net cash flow. He must redirect that exact liquidity into his debt. He must use the debt snowball or debt avalanche method to systematically eliminate his liabilities. He must aggressively route that freed up liquidity into clearing the principal balance of his toxic obligations. He starts with the $30,000 credit card debt. Eliminating a 21% interest rate is mathematically identical to finding a guaranteed 21% return on his money. You cannot find a guaranteed 21% return anywhere in the public markets. Paying off that card is the most efficient investment David can make. Once the credit card is gone, David moves his cash flow to the $75,000 home equity line at 10%. Then he clears the student loans at 8%. In exactly 5 years, by the time David reaches age 58, his balance sheet is completely clean. He has wiped out the $145,000 structural drag. He no longer has monthly debt obligations pulling against his lifestyle. Now look at his options at age 58. His $1.5 million traditional account has continued to grow in the background through its base investments and employer matches. But now, David has completely freed up his monthly cash flow. He no longer has a HELOC payment. He no longer has credit card payments. He can now use his remaining 7 years before his target retirement age to max out both his base contributions and his enhanced catch-up contributions. Because he enters retirement with zero debt, his monthly income requirements are dramatically lower. He does not need to pull large, forced distributions from his traditional 401k just to pay past bills. He keeps himself in a lower tax bracket during retirement. He protects his nest egg from excessive taxation. He has replaced a negative mathematical friction with structural financial control. You need to take 3 specific actions this week to audit your own situation. First, log into your employer's HR or payroll portal. You need to look at how they are handling the mandatory Secure Act 2.0 catch-up system for anyone tracking over the $145,000 income threshold. Verify if your company has fully updated their systems to route these catch-up dollars to a Roth destination. Second, calculate the exact blended interest rate of your non-mortgage debt. Write down every balance and every rate on a single sheet of paper. If your average interest rate on that debt sits above 8%, you need to make a tactical adjustment. Formally adjust your 401k election down to the exact employer matching maximum. Freeze the extra catch-up amount for now. Third, redirect every single dollar of that newly uncovered net cash flow directly into the principal balance of your highest interest debt instrument. Do not leave it sitting in a checking account. Send it straight to the source of the friction. Clean your balance sheet before you hit your retirement target date. The math at 57 is different from the math at 27. But the math at 57 still works. You just have to be willing to look at it.